So now we'll proceed to our next session, which is the Charles M. Rice session, who won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2020 for the discovery of hepatitis C virus. I would like to welcome our chairperson, Dr. Bansi Sabu, who is the Chief Diabetologist and Chairman at Diabetes Care and Hormone Clinic, Ahmedabad, who is the Advisory Board Member at JAPI, Journal of Diabetology, International Journal for Medicine and Public Health, Journal of Nutrition and Nutraceuticals. So, sir, I would request you to introduce our speaker, panelist. Sorry.
So first of all, thanks Kavya for kind introduction. Thanks Mayur Bhai and team of Swastikon for inviting me, particularly Yash. So the next half an hour, what we are going to discuss, and we have two eminent personality with us. And to introduce our international expert, Dr. David Russell John from UK, who is a professor of diabetes and endocrinology. He is a consultant Diabetes, Endocrinology, General Medicine, Royal Surrey Country Hospital, NHS Foundation. He's having multiple degrees, but very important, he was past consultant at St. Thomas Medical School, and he's at Institute Royal Surrey Country Hospital, NHS Foundation Trust. He's multiple awards. He has published more than 100 peer-reviewed papers in insulin, IGF, and growth hormone. He is affiliated with Royal College of Physicians, Ireland. He is Association of Clinical Diabetologists and Diabetes UK. Along with him, we have Professor Dr. Rajesh Rajput, our own close friend. Dr. Rajesh Rajput is qualified MD DM from PGI Chandigarh. Currently, he is a professor of medicine, head of Department of Endocrinology, senior professor from PGI Rohtak. He has also have multiple awards, fellowships, fellowship of RSSDI also, and fellowship of American College of Endocrinology along with FRCP. He have more than 150 publications in various international and national journal and books. So I welcome both Dr. Rajesh Rajput and Professor Dr. David Russell John. Can I have both of them?
Yeah, thank you, Mansi.
Yes. Now
yes.
it's
good afternoon.
Good,
only, so I,
good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation.
Now, can we stop sharing the slides of the doctor and we can have a simple discussion? So all three of us can see each other.
Yes.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Yes. So Yash is also there. So please be there. Yes. So the first very important question is that there are different studies which had shown the number of type 2 diabetic patients who have hypoglycemia. As HAT study reported that 46.5% patients have reported hypoglycemia, and similar percentages were obtained from other studies which is talking about the hypoglycemia. But in GAPE2 survey, there is nearly 36% of patients reported to have experienced self-treated hypoglycemia during the previous 30 days. So my first question to both of you rather, but we start with Dr. David, that please share your experience. What could be the factors which is contributing to the difference in the incidence across countries? Number one, as far as hypoglycemia is concerned, first I will ask Dr. David and then we will have the same question to Dr. Rajesh also.
Okay.
Yes,
well,
Dr. David.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for the invitation to join your meeting. I'm very impressed with it so far. Now, in terms of answering the question, any of these studies that look across nations are always fraught with danger because there are different cultural issues, there are different dietary issues, there are, and some people are more likely to present and report hypoglycemia than other people. But one thing that we do absolutely know that every study that's been performed is that hypoglycemia for insulin-treated people with type 2 is always higher than you expect. And it is a clinical problem, but obviously much at a lower rate than with type 1 diabetes. And there are some things that are associated with it, and those are increasing duration of insulin treatment, age, and interestingly, fear of hypoglycemia. Those who are particularly frightened are more likely to describe. And when you look at clinical trials, you've got to be very careful because certain trials people are given insulin for the trial, and therefore they're which when normally they don't have to pay for it, and that this can also have a bearing on how people respond to the trial. And then lastly, if people are measuring their blood sugar very frequently, they are more likely to pick up and notice and be aware of hypoglycemia. And so people who have the ability to measure, and we're seeing this now with the flash glucose monitoring, is that if people, once you can do that and have continuous monitors, you find it much more readily as well. So I think that it's a multifaceted problem.
You want to add anything, Dr. Rajesh?
Yeah, Bansi. Well, Dr. David has pointed out some important facets. But if we look why there are differences in prevalence of hypoglycemia across various studies, and HATS2 is one of the study done by Kamlesh Kunti group. It's one of the very big study involving multiple parts of the world. But I personally believe when we are talking of hypoglycemia, say in our own country, now we have to look at multiple variables, and that also account for differences. Say for first, what is the baseline HbA1c? Now the hypoglycemia problems actually come into picture as patient tries to come close to 7%. Now the mean HbA1c across various studies in our country remains more than 8.5 or 9%. So the more emphasis is rather on good glycemic control rather than picking up the hypoglycemia, because that becomes a more problem as you come close to the targets. Number two, there are many cultural and social issues. Now, monitoring and measuring frequency of hypoglycemia means patient has to do multiple times finger prick and do self-monitoring of blood glucose. Now, this actually amounts to the cost of strips also. Now, in contrast to the West, where the healthcare is largely covered by the insurance and the other issues, in our country, people are paying out of their pocket. Now, doing multiple pricks throughout a day and maintaining a very strict vigil when you are developing hypoglycemia, actually, then it adds cost to the treatment. And here, actually, that is why probably in our country, we have poor data reporting regarding the actual prevalence of hypoglycemia when we are talking about type 1 or type 2 diabetics who are receiving insulin therapy. Number three, if we see the studies, as we have rightly pointed out, actually hypoglycemia is a bigger problem in type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes who are on multiple basal bolus insulin regime. However, the studies have actually involved variable type of patients. Not only that, the definition of hypoglycemia used in different studies is highly variable. Now that actually adds to the heterogeneity when we come to define about the exact prevalence. We know we have serious hypoglycemia, we have documented hypoglycemia, we have probable hypoglycemia, we have relative hypoglycemia. So there are a number of subsets of hypoglycemia and number of definitions. Unfortunately, if you see the word data, there are variations in definitions, right from the glucose level, whether it is 72 or 54, to whether it is documented or relative. So there are a number of variables. And lastly, what type of cultural and eating patterns we are having, that are also going to decide regarding the prevalence of hypoglycemia. So although we often talk about the concept of hypoglycemia and management of diabetes, and to me there are only two big challenges, hypoglycemia and weight gain. But unfortunately, the issue of hypoglycemia is probably the most challenging one. We does not have uniform set of definitions. We do not have uniform set of timings to measure. If you see the Western guideline, there is a concept of bedtime glucose monitoring, because they used to have dinner and they used to have a supper. In contrast, in our country, the dinner time is actually 10 or 11 p.m. in the night. So hardly there is a difference between dinner or supper. What is the definition of nocturnal hypoglycemia? Again, it is variable across various definitions. So lots of issues surrounding the concept of hypoglycemia. But what is important is, to me, over years we have learned that when we are going to start insulin therapy in our patients of type 1 and type 2, what is most important is to teach our patient how to recognize hypoglycemia, so that at least they can prevent them at a time when that does not have a medical access. That is the most important. We have to spend some time when we are giving the initial prescription of insulin therapy so that they can identify and they can treat it successfully. Over to you,
So
Bansi.
Rajesh, thank you very much, because it was very nice discussion. You had talked about it, because for largely for the audience, they must understand that there are differences between multiple studies and survey and all those things, and across the countries and inside the country also, there are multiple survey may give you the different results. But do you feel that there is a underreporting, and which I feel also that underreporting is done, as Dr. David was talking, those patients who are in the clinical trial, they are now started doing multiple self-monitoring of blood glucose, and those patients who are not doing, and now with the continuous glucose monitoring, we are seeing that a lot of patients have actually hypoglycemia, but they are not reported. So I fully agree.
Bansi, I totally agree with you. In our country, there is a not huge underreporting of hypoglycemia, huge. And as I have told you, in clinical trial setup where patient is closely monitored, provided with the supply of strips, glucometer in trial, given the CGMS benefit, there probably the reporting rates are much, much higher. In contrast to real world studies, where again, as I have told you, patient has to pay out of their pockets. So actually they tend to measure less. So you are absolutely correct. I agree with your point.
You know that 46 physicians, they have reported that it is the insulin, that is responsible for the hypoglycemia. So what is your approach after the immediate management of hypoglycemia? Would you like to consider a titrating or switching the insulin therapy? My first question, I would like to ask this to Dr. Rajesh Rajput. If you have a patient with hypoglycemia who is already treated with insulin, what will be your first approach? Will you titrate the dose whatever insulin he is taking, or would you like to switch the patient on insulin?
Again,
you would like to have very quick,
Bansi, you have asked a very important question. When patient on insulin therapy develops hypoglycemia, first we have to identify the circumstances surrounding the hypoglycemia. And history taking is probably most important. Say, for example, whether patient has missed a meal after taking insulin therapy, which is responsible for causing hypoglycemia, whether patient has undergone an intense exercise schedule, which is not planned, and then taken a usual amount of insulin therapy, which might have resulted in hypoglycemia. If patient is developing some countercurrent illness, which is responsible for causing hypoglycemia. Patient of diabetes who develop chronic renal disease because of poor control might are more predisposed to develop hypoglycemia. We know presently there is a change in culture, and going to the parties, taking alcohol in a small amount in party has become a social norms. So whether you have person has taken alcohol but has not taken something to eat along with it, and over that has also taken insulin therapy, he is again predisposed to develop hypoglycemia. So it is not simply titrating the dose or changing the insulin therapy. It is actually the entire historical and clinical part which we have to first take into account to decide. Now, if all these factors are ruled out, say for example, in a given we are not able to find out anything, then obviously if a person who is on insulin therapy develop hypoglycemia, then the first step is to titrate the dose depending on which insulin regime patient is receiving, what is the timing of hypoglycemia patient is having. Now, all these things are to be taken into account to change the dosage of hypoglycemia. Now, why it is important to change the dosage of hypoglycemia? Because one episode of hypoglycemia predisposes you or a person to hypoglycemic unawareness. He become more prone to develop more serious episodes of hypoglycemia. So we want to relax some degree of control, change, and try to find out the surroundings around hypoglycemia. And the last option obviously always remains is change of insulin therapy, which I think we will discuss later on.
Yes, David, you want to add anything here?
I would essentially agree, and I think it's all. It's very important to distinguish an event from something that is persistent and consistent. So if you're having hypoglycemia at the same time every day, then you've got to make more of a structural problem, a structural change, either in terms of diet or changing dose or changing the profile of the insulin to try and get around that. And And as you know, a lot of the analogues with longer duration, flatter profiles, particularly nocturnal hypoglycemia, we would make that change to one of those. But
So,
in terms of principles, I fully agree.
yes. So one, you know, that like Dr. Rajesh was also talking, and we all understand that type 1 diabetic patients who are on multiple insulin injection, and they are more prone to develop hypoglycemia. We all agree. But as the incidence and prevalence of type 2 diabetes is also very high, and many of our type 2 diabetic patients are on insulin as well as they are on sulfonylurea, which can lead to also hypoglycemia. So I mean, the incidence of severe hypoglycemia in one of the paper had shown almost like 35 to 70 per 100 patient years. I mean, this is what. So I just want to ask Dr. David that what are the cardiovascular implication of severe hypoglycemia? As these are the type 2 diabetic patients with a longer duration of diabetes, many of them are already on hypoglycemic agents. They might be on insulin also, and at the same time, they have established cardiovascular disease or they are prone to develop CVD. Is there any evidence to suggest that newer basal insulin are better as far as CV implications are concerned?
Okay. Well, I think the first thing to say is that a major hypoglycemic event is a real alarm bell, and it's telling you that this person is more prone to cardiovascular events later on in life, and the association is incredibly strong, and all of the trials have shown this, and it's often quite surprising, and it's not necessarily related to HbA1c. If you have major hypoglycemic events, you are much more likely to have a cardiovascular events. And therefore we've learned, you know, in the last sort of 10 years, it's something we address and we try and look at because we know that there are these more long-term implications for our patients. In terms of type 2 patients, you know, this is a particular alarm bell. In terms of you know, trying to mitigate this, obviously you can use analogs that hopefully don't have less peaks or more predictable in terms of their insulin profile to see whether that helps. But as we've discussed before, you also need to look at all of the other issues that may be contributing to a major event. What is interesting is that in the DEVOTE study, which is one of the largest trials that has looked at cardiovascular outcomes, comparing glargine with degludec, if you analyze it, and there've been a lot of post hoc analysis papers that have really been quite interesting, that are sort of showing some insight onto the pathogenesis of this, and showing that those people who are very high risk of developing hypoglycemia, there seems to be a difference in that the longer acting flatter profile reduces both hypoglycemia major events, but also appears to be associated with a reduced cardiovascular outcome. So these trials are shedding light, but there is this association, and the direct pathophysiology we don't fully understand. But it is clear that it is linked in every study that's been performed.
So do you agree with you? I mean, Dr. Rajesh Rajput?
Yeah, I totally agree that in patients who are actually having an underlying cardiovascular disease, once they develop hypoglycemia, they are more at chance to develop an adverse cardiovascular event in compared to those who does not have an underlying CVD. Now, exact pathophysiology, there are a number of pathways which has been postulated, implicated, but there is no doubt about it that patients who are having any comorbid condition, and that is why, Bansi, presently we always say there is no single HbA1c for every individual with type 2 or type 1 diabetes. We have to individualize the targets, we have to individualize the therapy. So if patient is having a comorbid condition, definitely that individual is more at risk to develop hypoglycemia, which we have to avoid at all the point of times.
But that's fine. I mean, we are just looking for that. If the patient is having established cardiovascular disease, would you like to use the molecule which has got more safety data as far as the newer
I
basal.
agree. I totally agree. The newer generation of insulins are probably better as far as the chances to develop hypoglycemia at identical degree of glucose control is concerned.
Exactly.
I totally agree.
So as Rajesh, you are talking that, that there are patients and they are more prone to develop hypoglycemia, like elderly population, and where you would like not to keep the tighter glycemic control. And if they develop hypoglycemia, they may have more problem, maybe because of reduced hypoglycemia unawareness, maybe an elderly person who is having diabetes since last 20, 30 years, or maybe because of defective counter-regulatory mechanism, or they may have some other concomitant medication or comorbidities like renal dysfunction. So what insulin would you prefer in this population who have either who are elderly or those who have renal or hepatic impairment? Do you want an analog or a faster insulin acting analog, or the routine regular insulin? What type of
Okay,
insulin
I
would
will
you like?
take up specifically the CKD part because we have published a consensus statement which is usually quoted across the world in DRCP some 4 years back, where we have tried to address the issue of safety of insulin in patients with CKD. So first is the dose of insulin, then is the type of insulin. I will address both the issues. If we see the dose of insulin, now as we are talking of calculating eGFR for oral drugs. Similarly, when we are talking of insulin therapy in patients of type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes with CKD, we should calculate eGFR. Now, if patient is already receiving some insulin therapy and is having some episodes of hypoglycemia, if GFR levels are more than 60, probably no dosage reduction is required. Between 16 to 15, around 25% of the total daily doses needs to be reduced. And less than 15, around 50% of the dosage needs to be reduced. Second group of patients are insulin naive patients. Now, who have to be started on insulin therapy, eGFR is calculated, they have CKD. If your eGFR is more than 60, in type 1, it is 1 unit, in type 2, it is 0.5 unit per kg body weight. Starting, then we can divide basal bolus depending on the type of insulin therapy. And if patient has an eGFR of less than 15, then in type 1, it is 0.5, and in type 2, it is 0.25. All these recommendations are given in our paper where the listeners can go and find out these tables based on evidence. Then comes the type of insulin therapy. We have thoroughly analyzed the different type of insulin therapy in patients of CKD at Bansi. To the benefit of viewers, actually the older generation of human insulins which we are using conventionally still using, they are not, their PK and PD profiles are never tested in a rigorous environment of patients with comorbid conditions when these insulins were given approval at those point of time. In contrast, the newer generation of insulin, say basal insulin, when we talk of Degludec. Now for Degludec, its PK profile is studied at all levels of eGFR, and it is found to be safe irrespective of your eGFR. So you can safely use Degludec as a basal insulin in patients with CKD at all levels of GFR. When it comes to shorter acting insulin, again we have some data with aspart insulin and ultra fast acting aspart, which is FIASP, where again they have been tested in small PK studies during clinical development programs at all levels of GFR and are found to be safe and are causing less hypoglycemia. So as far as CKD part is concerned, definitely we have information about use of these newer generations of basal analogs, both short acting as well as long acting in clinical trial setting.
Great. So Dr. David, you want to
I would just like to basically agree and say that insulin is safe in renal impairment, but you do have to modify the dose. And we always teach our juniors that if someone who has poor control, the control suddenly gets better, you've always got to make certain you check their renal function to make sure that there isn't something else going on. So yes, I fully endorse what has just been said.
So one very important point which I just want to summarize, that hypoglycemia is commonly there. It is underreported. If there is an hypoglycemia, take detailed history as Dr. Rajesh was talking about it. Then if you need, you may think of switching the insulin. or changing the insulin out of the insulin which we are changing in patient with type 2 diabetes. If they have established cardiovascular disease or with multiple cardiovascular risk factor, try to choose the insulin which has got a CV safety data. If you have a patient with elderly renal dysfunction or hepatic dysfunction, use the insulin which have the analog which are more safe, and try to use with the shorter acting insulin analog. And as Rajesh was talking about, the recently they have published a paper to show that these are the insulin which causes less hypoglycemia from India. So one important question which I want to ask both of you again, with the established fact that hypoglycemia increases the risk of hospitalization and increases the length of stay also, and there is an increased risk of mortality and morbidity both. So do you think that these newer basal insulin or the bolus insulin which we were talking about, they can really required for some of your elderly patients or patient with CKD, they have as in this regard as far as hospitalization, stay of hospitalization, morbidity or mortality because of hypoglycemia, instead of that using these newer insulin which Dr. Rajesh was just talking about? Do we have data that they have A's in this regard? I mean, they are better in compared to the older.
Right. Well, I'll put on a UK perspective, which I suspect will be different from your own inpatient experience. But in our hospital, we have networked all the glucose meters so that every day I can see who is out of range in the hospital, and my team go around and visit everybody on every ward who are out of range, and because healthcare, the insulin is reimbursed, we have free reign. We are allowed to use whatever we want in essence, and the analogs have a more physiological profile of delivering insulin when it's injected under the skin compared to NPH or human insulin. And therefore, we have a very, very low threshold to swap people who are on human insulin onto analog regimes. And reducing hypoglycemia in hospital saves bed days. And we've done a study showing that by introducing our team going around the ward every day, we've saved hundreds and hundreds of bed days, which has helped the health economy. So that's a UK perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, David. If we see our own country, when patients are admitted in the hospital, their meal pattern changes totally. It becomes erratic, in fact. And if we see the conventional insulin, because of peak effect with pH or with regular insulin, they are more at risk of hypoglycemia under these settings. And definitely, we are going to prefer insulin analogs, especially the longer one like degludec. I tell you, because we are now going through COVID pandemic, and I am one of the members for task force here. In fact, in our seriously sick patient who are admitted in ICU with COVID infections, we have preferred to use insulin analogs like degludec or glargine as a preferred basal insulin therapy rather than using NPH because of inherent risk of more hypoglycemia because meal pattern become erratic. So definitely analogs have an edge over the conventional insulin when we are treating in patients hyperglycemia.
Thank you, Rajesh. Before I take the last question of COVID and hyperglycemia, there are 2-3 couple of questions which had come. As there's an older people popping up with more oral hypoglycemic pill by mistake sometimes causes hypoglycemia. How to identify this situation, as Dr. Rajesh had already talked about the detailed history, which is very, very important for this point of time. And without that, you can't diagnose somebody's why he had developed hypoglycemia. Is it the missing of the dose or missing the meal? So what is the reason for that? And somebody had asked, can SGLT2 inhibitor be used in newly diagnosed patient with CV morbidity? Yes, it can be used. So I don't think we need to ask these questions to the expert. But before we end, this very important question, that retrospective study from Vivan had shown that there is around 10% of the patient with type 2 diabetes and COVID-19 has suffered at least one episode of hypoglycemia. So the 10% of the patients who have either diabetes during this COVID pandemic, they have developed a severe hypoglycemia also. So in current scenario, how does COVID-19 infection impact glucose regulation in patient with type 2 diabetes? First, I would like to ask the Rajesh, because he was just talking that he is from the task force from the government of Haryana, and then I will ask the David your views also.
There are number of pathophysiological aspects which has been implicated right from direct ACE expression over pancreatic beta cell, where COVID virus is gaining entry and causing direct toxicity to pancreatic beta cell and is responsible for new onset of diabetes or exacerbation of diabetes. In fact, we have seen patients of COVID admitting with DKA also. Second, the concomitant use of drugs. Since we know in moderate to severe patients, steroid is considered the therapy which is going to reduce mortality with dexamethasone trial, recovery trial. All the patients are put on steroid therapy. With use of steroid, again, the pre-existing diabetes is going to deteriorate and there is new onset of diabetes because of steroid therapy. So directly related to the disease, related to the drugs which we are using to treat COVID-19, there is an increased prevalence of diabetes in patients of COVID-19, and it is control of glucose which is going to make the difference. There is no doubt. There are some studies. We are doing our own study for that, and we will share with you once we will finish our analysis.
Dr.
Over to you.
David.
Okay, just we're in the middle of the pandemic at the moment, and our the health services are just hoping we're, you know, for example, in our hospital we have more than 50% of every bed in the hospital is taken up by COVID now, and with this new variant, it's just, you know, gone bonkers, and you know, we've shut all of the other elective work and just trying to and find enough space for everyone with the disease. I would totally agree that basically it can present as diabetes, it can present as DKA. For people on SGLT2 inhibitors, we've had people turn up in euglycemic ketoacidosis extremely unwell. So there's a whole multiple facet, but also the steroids as well. And which is the mainstay of treatment. And there are more recent studies that are just completing where they're using even higher doses of steroids. And if they show benefit, then, you know, we are going to be very busy looking after everyone who comes in, and because we're seeing, you know, a large proportion of people developing diabetes, and we are treating with insulin straight off. As a means to control it. People who are very severe, who are ventilated, you then have the problem of, because we try and feed people, and if you then put them in the prone position, which is one of the ways you do to ventilate, this interferes with feeding, and this interferes with the sugar levels, and so you end up in a, you know, you've got to be adaptive, but it is clear that you've got to try every trick you know to try and keep those sugars good. For the people with the disease, and some people are found to be incredibly insulin resistant and needing huge doses.
Really?
And that's a common finding across all of the countries.
Thank you. Thank you, David. So, I mean, just to end before that, I will just tell all the audience that during this COVID time, we are seeing a lot of patients who are in hospital and outside the hospital developing a lot of hyperglycemia, and it's better to get them on insulin right time and try to get the best control of it, because they may develop secondary complications also. With this, I would like to thank Dr. David and Dr. Rajesh for joining us. And once again, thanks to Swasthikon and organizer. And now over to the organizer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bansal, Dr.
Thank you.
David.
Thank you. Nice meeting you, David.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you so much, everyone. And it was indeed a very informative session.